Hello, welcome to When the Smoke Clears. I am the Recovery Plug. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's doing good today. I know my day is going great. Another great day to be alive. Another great day to be sober. Man, what's happening? But before we get started with this video podcast, please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers, and for those of us who are still in the struggle of those things that keep us bound down. So if you would, a moment of silence, please. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. Alrighty, let's get started, man. Day's going good, but I was kind of wondering what I wanted to talk about today in this segment of this video podcast that I'm doing. To give you I guess a little refresher, if you will, of the whole purpose of doing this podcast for myself is to share with the audience things that have helped me along the way in recovering from different things, such as what I call the neurological brain disorders that I deal with on the daily basis, and that's anything from I deal with drug addiction, drug and alcohol addiction, PTSDs, childhood traumatic experiences, anger, depression, sadness, suicidal thoughts. I've dealt with all of those disorders at one point in time in my life, and still do today to some extent. I guess the difference is from the present time till whenever I don't know. I've been dealing with this my whole life, but I guess from the time that I was aware that I had this problem, you know what I mean? That the things that I was feeling, finally, there was some a labeling behind it, if you will. You know what I mean? Because there's, sometimes you go through things and you feel these things that you're feeling, these different types of emotions and this presence of being and this and that and it seems to be, sometimes it's just like you're walking through life in this maze of, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know where you're going. You know what I mean? Yeah, you still have this structured environment that you're living in, you're going to work, you're dealing with your family, you're whatever it is that you do, right? But while you're going through this whole cycle of life, you're just floating around, if you will. You know what I mean? There was points in time in my life that I felt like a month had gone by and I'm like, what just happened? You know what I mean? But because my brain was just mapped out with this structured environment thought process, if you will, that, okay, I know that I got to get up. I know I got to go to work. I know I got to, buy groceries. I know that I got to take care of the kids. I know that I got to do this. I got to do that. There's always this structured map with this start and end to it. You know what I mean? So you get so repetitive with it that, have you ever driven to some place that you've driven to on the daily, and for most of us that's work, right? And you just seem like you're half asleep sometimes, you know what I mean? But you made it to that one point because your body's so used to driving that way, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm talking about, is that we live in this environment that we just lose track of where we're going, what we're doing, but because we've done it so much that life seems to pass us by. Do you ever feel like that? I mean, I know I do, and here of late, you know, I don't know if it's just me or what, but I've gotten, you know, I always mention this that I deal with quite a few things, right? As far as um, my recovery goes, and the things that I used to do and the things that I do now, and you know, it's I try to I kind of diagnose myself now, if you will. I kind of like always am catching myself thinking and going through the day. You know what I mean? It's just like taking inventory of my daily activities, and for some reason, it's helped me out to better my day the next day. You know what I mean? Because I'm taking inventory, and I got this journal, and I journal stuff down. You know what I mean? I journal the things that I'm grateful for throughout the day. I journal things that I hear people say that encourage me. I even journal things down that I hear people maybe talking that kind of, I'm just wondering, like, wow, you know, I used to think like that, or, you know, just different stuff, right? But it has helped me live a different way. And what I mean by that, I heard this thing, I heard this deal where this guy says that we live our life through this map process, if you will, because you're mapping your way to point A to point B. In other words, okay, I gotta go to work, so I know what that is for me. I gotta get up early. I gotta get up. I gotta, you know, get ready. You know, get dressed, put gas in the car. You know, make sure that I got a lunch or whatever it is that you do, right? So this is a process that you know that's going to get you to work and that's going to get you back to the house. So it's a point A to point B, and this is something that you've mapped out for yourself. You know what I mean? There's a beginning and an end to it, and you know that once you got to the end, you've accomplished it. Okay? So there's another way that he was explaining that living through this compass, if you will. In other words, now you're living through life through a compass, in a sense, like, okay, the compass is going to point you in a direction, but it's not going to give you an end to that. You know what I mean? In other words, okay, I'm going to go to work. Yeah, that's where my compass is pointing me, but does it mean that I have to stop helping people? I have to stop, you know, doing something to make money, or doing, you know, because ultimately you're doing something that's got a result to it, right? And maybe you can change that. You know, maybe you can change that mentality to say, okay, well, if I'm going to stop helping people at 5 o'clock because that's when work's done and I'm done. I'm checking out. You know what I mean? And instead of doing that, maybe saying, you know what? I'm going to work on myself, you know, for an hour or two or whatever. You know what I mean? And I've been doing that. I've been doing that and living like, and I'm just barely, I've been doing this for, I don't know, a few months now. And it's taken time just for me, and taken silence time. And, you know, it's said that it's supposed to, help your thought process. It's supposed to, you know, help with your mental well-being, with your neuroplasticity. that sort of thing. And I'm really intrigued and I'm really into how the mind works. Anything that has to do with the brain, and the reason that I'm really pay attention to that a lot is because I've had, injuries with the brain processes and that sort of thing, and there's been 2 points in my life that I couldn't walk because of it. You know what I mean? So I had brain surgery done once, and it took me almost a year and a half, 2 years to actually start walking again. And then I got into another situation where I couldn't use my leg because of an injury, and I wound up in a wheelchair again. And so it wasn't a neural thing, but I wound up back in that chair. So it really got me to thinking. I was like, man, I totally forgot that I had gone through this traumatic thing, and then being back in a wheelchair due to a leg injury kind of brought me back to to that point, and that I can remember myself at that point in time when I was in that after the brain surgery and all that stuff, that I could remember myself saying that I was going to do this, and I was praying, and I was going to live a different way, and just all these things that I was chanting out and trying to manifest into my life. And then I forgot. You know what I mean? After I got well and was able to walk again, and I got into everything that I talked about and asked for, and that I wanted for it to manifest in my life. Some of the things happened, some of them didn't, but my point is that I just totally forgot about it. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't grateful. You know what I mean? I didn't take time to reflect on my days or any of that kind of stuff. I wound up going back to the addiction for years, and just this time around, when I got when I first started this podcast, I was in a wheelchair due to that leg injury, and that just got me back to that mindset that said, dude, you need to change your life, and you need to, remember the things that you cried about a long time ago, and you wanted to change in your life, and the things that you wanted to do, and how you wanted to do them, and even back then I was like, I don't want to have this roadmap of life. I want to just live freely and help and help myself and help others, and I just ungrounded myself, from that thought process, and just got lost in the addiction. And I am grateful today that I'm able to take time for myself and reflect on that day, reflect on that week, and getting silent time for yourself, to me, I think is very, very, very critical for your life, for your mentality, for the way your brain works. Because when you stop and cut all the distractions out of your life, and then just, even if it's, you don't even have to do a meditation, but just think of certain things. Just like if you're gonna stay in silence and think of one thing, for instance, just for example, stay in silence and just think of I don't know, the last time you were on vacation, or the last time you went fishing, or the last time you were on the beach, and you sit there and think about it for a whole hour if you can, and then just think about that whole day, think about what you remember about it, and just try to concentrate on just how you were feeling that day. What did you do? How did you walk? How did you talk? What were the things that you saw, the things that you smelled, just pay attention to those, paying attention to detail, in other words, and which is something. If you're a veteran, then you're pretty good at that. You should be anyway. But because I started taking that silent time, it's supposedly taking that silence time for yourself. It's basically you're working your brain out, and the brain is muscle just like anything else, right? If you work it out, if you take care of it, then guess what? It's going to work to a maximum efficiency, and it's going to last you a long time. You know what I mean? So if you take the hour, 30 minutes, even 15 minutes, and then just sit in silence. I personally meditate. You know what I mean? I personally sit in silence, and I'll meditate, or I'll just meditate saying prayers one after the other, or I'll just chant things that I've been, that are on my list of things that I want to manifest into my life, and I just keep saying them over and over and over for 15 minutes, for 20 minutes, for a whole hour. You know what I mean? And that's just how I do it. That's just my preference. And I feel that it works for me. You know what I mean? You want to do things that you feel are going to work for you, that you feel in your soul, in your heart, that it's meaningful, and that it means something, right? And that, for myself, when I take those silent times, and honestly, I do this on the daily basis, right? And sometimes I do it for a good whole hour. Sometimes it's just 15 minutes. But nonetheless, it's a repetitive thing that I do. And I know that that's a repetitive exercise that I'm doing with my brain. And it's getting it to work at maximum efficiency, if you will. And believe it or not, throughout my whole day, I'm thinking of positive things. I'm thinking of how I want to better myself, how I want to help somebody, how I want to learn more, how I want to get another book and read it, how I want to, watch another encouraging podcast, so that my mindset is always on this positive go, if you will, this go mode of just positivity and spirituality. Because, to me, I would rather be in that mode than be in the mentality mode when I was in the addiction, because nothing good came out of that. I was miserable, number one. I was running around just wishing that I wasn't running around, you know what I mean? And just wishing sometimes that I wasn't even around, and that's not good. You know what I mean? That to me is, I'm grateful that I was able to do different things, and I'm grateful that I'm here now. You know what I mean? I'm grateful that I'm doing these things now to not only better myself, but better the surroundings, my environment, and bettering anybody that comes in contact with me. You know what I mean? If you come in contact with me, I want you to be able to take something positive away from that. You know what I mean? Even if it's just a smile. You know what I'm saying? Even if we made eye contact and we smile at each other, that's positive. You know what I mean? You know how much of an impact that has on somebody? If you're walking down the street, if you're walking in the grocery store, and you just look at somebody, make eye contact with them, and give them this genuine smile like, hey, how are you? I hope your day's going good. But without saying anything, that's a very, very powerful thing, because a lot of people walk around. A lot of people are just, they don't have nobody. You know what I mean? Sometimes even if they do, just an acknowledging smile from a stranger, that moves something in your soul. You know what I mean? And when you make somebody smile, and people, I don't know about you, but for me, when I smile, I'm aware that I'm smiling. I'm aware that I just smiled, and it makes me feel good. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful gesture, and it opens up your mind and your heart to let a little bit of that in. You know what I mean? Because, we all could use a smile. We all could use that little bit of feel good. You know what I mean? And it doesn't have to come from, doing drugs or drinking alcohol or whatever it is that bounds you down that you think makes you feel better than you are going through the misery, right? And it's just it's better medicine, if you will. I just I don't know. I just think that taking time for yourself and taking time to sit in silence is a good exercise to do, because it opens up your mind, and it opens up your heart as well to different things, because we think a whole lot every single day. I believe it's scientifically proven that a human body, a human mind has 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. Can you imagine? That's a lot of thinking that you're thinking, and most of this thought process is things that you're thinking that are when you're just in just sitting mode. You know what I mean? When you're just driving, when you're just in this standstill mode, if you will. You know what I mean? Maybe you're watching TV or you're just watching a podcast. You're thinking of other things as you're doing it. You know what I mean? It's weird, but that's how it happens. And then when you're asleep, it even happens more. And so just taking that isolation time, I believe, is a good practice when you're dealing with different type of neurological brain disorders, and like I mentioned, mine are quite a few. You know what I mean? Everything from drug addiction to traumatic experiences, to PTSDs, to anger issues, to suicidal thoughts, to depression, sadness, those kinds of things. And I know that when I take time to just focus on one thing throughout the day, and then use that as just a focal, pinpointed thought process that allows my brain to train itself. You know what I mean, in a sense, and work it out. And I just find that it's been helping me like you wouldn't believe, man. It really, really has. And I find myself now where I enjoy that time, and it's almost like I can't wait for that time. You know what I mean? Because it's a time that I get to just reflect on my whole day, and then just sneak and pick these beautiful things and put them into practice. And I'm able to get the things that I don't need, that are just useless and wasteless energy that I'm doing, and not do them again. You know what I mean? And another thing is getting a sufficient amount of sleep. You know what I mean? Sufficient amount of sleep has been very, very critical for me, because I could remember when I was in the addiction, man, sleep was, sleep was a rare commodity, if you will, for me. You know what I mean? Because I always wanted to be up, and the drug kept me up, and if I was up, I wanted to use. You know what I mean? So resting has really been a helpful thing, and it's actually healthy, right? And it's and it's a necessity, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's not something, if it's something that you need. You know what I mean? And and actually your life depends on it. You know what I mean? So if you act that way, I act as if my sleep is part of of living. You know what I mean? Like, I need to have that sleep. I have to have it, and I make it a point to, you know, wind myself down the right way and make sure that I get X amount of sleep, and I, you know, get my silent mode, because I believe that my life is depending on this. And I try to put, if I can put all of this effort into using drugs and going out and getting drugs and maintaining that type of lifestyle, well, then guess what? I should be able to use that same energy to maintain a lifestyle like this, a lifestyle that has to do with positivity, spirituality, and recovery. You know what I mean? And I just think that, you know, using that same type of energy to live your life in a spiritual and positive way shouldn't be that hard. You know what I mean? And because it wasn't that hard for me to maintain a drug habit, and it wasn't that hard for me to live that lifestyle. You know what I mean? And because I did it for a long time. You know what I mean? Like I mentioned before, heck, my first indulging in that type of lifestyle, I was in the first grade, and I knew that it masked feelings, and I used that, and you know, by the grace of God, I don't have to do that today. You know what I mean? By the grace of God, by the grace of my higher power, and the energies from Mother Earth, and you know, just this whole, you know, cosmic ball of energy that I call a divinity, a divine energy, that I'm able to, you know, I feel like I wrap myself up in that, and when I do that, good things come out of it. You know what I mean? And they have been. You know what I mean? They have been, because I know when I was in the world of addiction, I engulfed myself in that type of energy, and when I did that, guess what? That's exactly what I did. I stayed in that negative realm. I stayed in that drug-induced state, and nothing ever good came out of it. And what I do now is I use that same type of energy, and I engulf myself in those type of habits, that journey of spirituality and recovery and positive and cosmic energy. That's how I live my life now. And it honestly has been a blessing, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? It's been a blessing because I'm happy. You know what I mean? I'm spiritually happy. I'm emotionally happy. I'm physically doing a whole lot better than I was when I was in the addiction. And you know, I'm doing things now that are just, you know, working out my brain and my spiritual being. You know what I mean? So I'm just excited about it. You know what I mean? And I just want to share that. You know what I mean? So I feel that if I share what has helped me along the way to get to recovery, positivity, and spirituality, well, then that might help somebody else out there who's listening to this podcast. And that's the whole point. You know what I mean? Is to help somebody else get into that good realm, man. Because it's great to be here, and it's great to be on this side of the fence, to be on this team, because it's just showing love and being part of that beautiful spiritual and positive energy is just amazing. But I just wanted to share that with you guys today, and just, you know, maybe, you know, take time for yourself and see how that works out for you. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that story with you guys, and hopefully that it was encouraging for somebody. But man, I guess that's going to be it for today's video. But if you would please give me a thumbs up, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, share my channel. Just know that when you do hit that subscribe button, it doesn't cost you a thing. But also know that when you do hit that subscribe button and share that channel, that you'll be helping out another veteran, another person that's dealing with homelessness, drug addiction, childhood traumatic experiences, PTSDs, depression, suicidal thoughts, anger issues, and sadness, because I personally have dealt with all those things, my friends. And I just know that sharing a message got me out, into this world of it got me here into this world of spirituality and positivity, and so I'd like to do the same, and hopefully that my message helps somebody out. Well, again, thank you again for watching my video podcast today. I really appreciate it. You guys have a blessed day. I guess until the next time, when the smoke clears, I am the Recovery Plug.